Am I the antagonist for asking my fiancé if she fact-checked it? My fiancé and I both have a tendency to question things, which is fine because I am a curious person myself and enjoy investigating certain matters. However, she questions everything I say and tends to nitpick, as I have heard people describe it. I'm not certain of the proper term. Essentially, if I were to tell her that she's standing in 3 feet of snow when she's actually buried to her waist, she would grab a tape measure, measure it, and insist that I am wrong because it's actually 3 feet and 1 inch. I've expressed to her multiple times that I really don't appreciate having every word fact-checked by Google or other sources. Despite this, she continues to do so. The last straw occurred a few days ago when she accompanied her friend to the hospital. She needed to go for something and her friend needed a blood draw. Being in the medical field, I have recently started working with lab techs and have been learning a lot about blood and blood draws. I enjoy sharing knowledge and explaining things I've learned because it helps me remember and also provides others with insights. So when she told me about her friend getting blood drawn, I took the opportunity to discuss some of the things I had just learned. She always asks about my day and how work was, but I struggle to explain it. It's like when people say, "Tell me about yourself," and then you completely forget who you are. I explained to her that sometimes when blood is drawn, they're not after the blood itself, but rather the serum within the blood, and the blood is disposed of. She proceeded to tell me that I was wrong because they drew blood, implying that they were after the blood itself. She then Googled it and explained lab procedures to me. For context, I am in the military. Along with my job, there are also many things I cannot discuss with her. Her friend is also in the military, but in a different branch and a different job, so it's not quite the same. She asked me a question related to my job, and I told her I couldn't talk about it. She continued to ask repeatedly, receiving the same answer each time. She proceeded to Google whether I could disclose the information and even asked her friend. She concluded that I could indeed reveal the information. This isn't the first time this has happened. At this point, I'm frustrated, for lack of a better word, and I basically say that if her friend and Google know more about my job and life than I do, then she can just rely on Google for everything. After a few hours, she made a few statements, and I responded with, "Has that been fact-checked?" After a few minutes of this back and forth, she expressed that it was annoying and angering her, to which I replied, "Are you sure you're mad? Did you consult Google first?" Yes, I am aware that my behavior is somewhat petty, but I tried to approach this maturely and have a conversation with her, and it didn't work. So after over a year, I finally gave up. It sounds like you've tried to communicate your feelings to your fiancé multiple times, expressing how her constant fact-checking and questioning makes you feel. It's understandable that it can be frustrating and annoying when everything you say is met with skepticism. It's important in a relationship to have trust and respect for each other's knowledge and experiences. While it's good to be curious and question things, there comes a point where it can feel excessive and undermine the validity of your words. Your fiancé's behavior of fact-checking you constantly, even when it comes to your own job and knowledge, shows a lack of trust in your expertise. It's also disrespectful to dismiss your explanations and insist on her version of the truth. It's understandable that you reached a breaking point and responded in a sarcastic manner, as her actions were consistently dismissive of your knowledge and experiences. However, it's worth noting that sarcasm may not be the most effective way to address the issue. It might be helpful to have a calm and serious conversation with your fiancé about how her behavior is affecting you and the relationship. Ultimately, it's important for both partners to be able to trust and respect each other's knowledge and expertise. Open communication and finding a balance between healthy curiosity and excessive fact-checking could help improve the dynamic in your relationship. Am I the antagonist for not letting my runaway get her things she left behind? I, 35-year-old female, and her father, 37-year-old male, had 2 children who are 6 years apart. I left him because I saw him go from using marijuana and alcohol to escalating to cocaine, pills, and finally heroin. Surprisingly, it was his own father who provided him with these substances. 3 years after I left him, he ended up in prison on drug-related charges. He spent 7 years in prison, during the last 3 years of which he was absent from our kids' lives due to his severe addiction. He was released in June 2022, and initially seemed to be doing well. He got a good job, saved money for a few months, and bought our daughter her first car. After he finished his time at the halfway house, I allowed him to stay on my couch for about 2 months. Eventually, he found his own place. To support him in getting his driver's license back, I forgave $12,000 of child support. Once he had his own place, I discovered that he was providing our daughter with marijuana and alcohol. Knowing the influence his father had on him, starting with marijuana and alcohol, I grew concerned that he was leading her down the same path. I did not approve of her using either of those substances, so I grounded her by taking away her car, phone, and job. In addition, he had her fill out forms for a home loan, which was completely inappropriate considering her age. She shared screenshots of her loan denials with him, highlighting that she's still a minor. Her punishment started on a Monday, but on Saturday morning, she went to my aunt's house and then ran away to her dad's. I love her and believe she's a good kid. Our home is not abusive, so she's running away solely to avoid facing the consequences of her actions and punishment. I want her to come back, but I won't compromise on my rules and her punishment. The punishment was temporary, lasting just 1 month. I'm not sure how to respond to her without coming across as a total jerk. To be honest, I know I am being harsh, but her reasons for running away don't evoke any sympathy from me. She's now messaging me, asking for certain things, but I feel like I'm responding in a way that won't convince her to come back. Deep down, I do want her to return home, but I won't compromise with a 17-year-old. I've been her sole parent so far, and suddenly this MF, father, shows up and spoils her with wants rather than needs, a role I've fulfilled for the past 13 years. She just drops me like that for him, someone who is leading her astray and using her. All the text screenshots are available on my page. Am I the asshole for not giving in to her demands and letting her have more things? You are not the asshole in this situation. Your ex-partner has a history of drug addiction, and it is understandable that you would be concerned about your daughter's well-being and his care. It is important to prioritize her safety and well-being above all else. Grounding her and imposing consequences for her actions is a reasonable response to her involvement with illegal substances and filling out forms for a home loan as a minor. It is important to set boundaries and enforce them to protect her from potential harm. However, it is also important to have open and honest communication with your daughter. While you should not bend the rules for her, it is important to listen to her concerns and address them in a compassionate manner. Try to have a calm conversation with her and express your love and concern for her well-being. Encourage her to make healthy choices and explain your reasons for the punishment. Also, consider involving a therapist or counselor to facilitate communication and provide support for both of you during this difficult time. Am I the antagonist for not telling a classmate I'm a guy? I am 19 years old and I am male. I have a hormonal condition that has resulted in my body not experiencing many of the typical changes that occur during male puberty. I've been taking testosterone for the past 3 years, but my doctors suspect that I may have partial androgen insensitivity because the hormone treatment hasn't had significant effects. I am shorter than the average guy, and my voice hasn't deepened much. I have a fairly common boy name, although it has become more popular among girls recently. Due to my small size, it is challenging to find men's clothing in my size that fits within my budget. As a result, I occasionally wear women's clothing because thrift stores rarely carry items in my size, but I opt for more gender-neutral pieces. I have long hair because I noticed that people would assume I was a butch lesbian when I had short hair. No disrespect to butches out there, but I identify as a gay man. And also because I personally prefer it that way. I do have some facial hair, although it isn't noticeable unless you're specifically looking for it. Overall, my appearance is quite androgynous. One of my classmates became upset when she saw me exiting the men's bathroom during lunchtime. While we are not close friends, our class is small, and we often sit together during lunch. She asked if I was trans, to which I responded that I wasn't. This seemed to weird her out, so I explained that the puberty fairy forgot about me and mentioned my hormonal condition. I clarified that I am indeed male. However, she was angry because she had discussed girl stuff in front of me and I once provided her with a pad. She has now informed the other girls in our class that I deceived them. Our other gay male classmate was present during these conversations, and sometimes my female friends have asked me for pads when they were in need, so I didn't think much of it at the time. But now I feel guilty for making her uncomfortable. Here's where I believe I may have acted inappropriately. I had some suspicions that people might mistake me for a girl, which has indeed happened quite frequently. However, I didn't care enough to correct people, and I often don't even hear when someone mistakenly uses she/her pronouns when referring to me because I'm not present during those conversations. I wasn't entirely certain how most people perceived my gender. One of the girls in my class did recognize me as male, as we had a small incident where she almost removed her hijab in front of me, so I thought it was relevant to mention. It's just challenging to find a natural way to inform people that I am actually male, especially those I am not close with. I genuinely didn't believe it was important for most people to know what gender they thought I was. But now I worry that I may have crossed a line by making someone uncomfortable. Am I the asshole in this situation? You have a valid medical condition that has affected your physical appearance and development. It's not your responsibility to ensure that everyone around you knows your gender identity. You've been open about your hormone condition, and have even mentioned it to the girl who confronted you about using the men's bathroom. It's unfortunate that she misinterpreted the situation and spread misinformation about you. It's important to remember that you have the right to express yourself in a way that feels comfortable to you. Wearing clothes that fit your body and having long hair are personal choices that shouldn't be dictated by someone else's expectations. You've also shown empathy and kindness by providing pads to your female friends when they needed them. It might be helpful to have a conversation with the girl who confronted you to explain your perspective and correct any misunderstandings. However, ultimately, how you choose to present yourself is your decision, and you shouldn't feel obligated to conform to anyone else's expectations. Am I the antagonist for telling my aunt that I'm sorry she feels that way about my brother's lack of kindness? My mom and aunt have a deep-seated dislike for each other. To sum it up, when they were teenagers, my mom stole my aunt's boyfriend. While I was growing up, my aunt was always kinder to my cousins and would often take them on enjoyable trips. She frequently took them to Disneyland and similar places. We don't have much money, and my aunt is really the only one with the time and means to go on extravagant trips. So I must admit I felt a lot of jealousy, especially because that's all anyone would talk about during family gatherings. This trend continues since my mom has many siblings, and the cousins range from 27 to 4 years old at the moment. Maybe it sounds silly, I don't know. I haven't been able to afford much, but I finally saved up enough money to take my parents, little brother, and boyfriend to Disneyland this past summer. It has always been a dream of mine. My little brother, who is 6, is the only child, so we tend to spoil him, and I got him everything he wanted. However, my brother has been wearing hand-me-downs from our cousins for a long time and only owns a few inexpensive toys, so it doesn't matter to me. He was incredibly happy. Recently, my aunt sent me a text message. "Hey, I hope you don't mind me texting you. It's difficult for me to get through to your mother. I noticed that your brother keeps showing off his Disney things. It's hurting the feelings of the other kids, and honestly, it's putting a lot of pressure on me. The other kids don't receive much merchandise because I have to pay for it all myself, so now they all come to me asking for things I can't afford. Don't take this the wrong way because I know you and your brother are kind kids, and he's just excited. But it's been 3 months, and I think we can all teach him to be more considerate, if you understand what I mean." I excluded some personal details, but that's essentially the text. I was a little annoyed. After all, my brother had never even left our small town before the trip. Can we really blame him for still being excited about it? Besides, the other kids always talk about their vacations, and my brother has even cried because he felt left out. I know what it's like for him because I went through it myself. Yes, I got over it, but it still hurt me when I was little. I genuinely don't care if my brother isn't being kind. I simply told my aunt that I'm sorry she felt that way. She bombarded me with question marks, but eventually understood my point and accused me of being bitter and turning my brother into an unlikable person. I ignored her. Now my cousins, who are my age, are asking me if all this is true and if I'm truly upset over not being able to go to Disneyland as a child. Maybe I am. Am I the asshole for what I told my aunt? They are all claiming I'm in the wrong because she's the nicest person ever and was always respectful towards me. Your aunt's concerns about the other kids feeling left out are valid, but it is not your responsibility to control your brother's excitement. It is important for children to learn to handle their emotions, and it's a good opportunity for the other kids to understand that not everyone can afford the same things. You have every right to feel bitter about not being able to go on elaborate trips like your cousins did, and it is not petty to express those feelings. It seems like your aunt may be overreacting and trying to make you feel guilty for something that is not your fault. Your cousins should not be judging you based on one-sided information. It's important for you to explain your perspective to them and clarify that you are not being bitter or unkind. Understanding and empathy are important in resolving any misunderstandings within the family. Am I the antagonist for telling my family that they never cared about my birthday before? Why should it matter now? When I was 6 years old, my parents divorced and I had equal custody between my mom and dad. My mom quickly remarried to my stepdad, who already had 3 children, Alex, Violet, and Mabel. Unfortunately, I was continuously bullied by them for things that I couldn't control, such as having a speech impediment and not being able to afford expensive clothes. It was also tough because I could only see my dad on weekends. Despite this, my mom and stepdad did very little to stop the bullying, simply telling me that kids will be kids. My mom would occasionally scold Violet and Mabel if they hurt me during their play, but it never went beyond that. I had to watch as my step-siblings received lavish gifts for birthdays and Christmas, getting everything they wanted from their wish lists, while I only received basic necessities. The only time I got something I truly wanted was when my dad gave it to me, although he couldn't do as much due to making less money than my stepdad. I still appreciated his efforts. Even on my birthday, I wasn't allowed to enjoy it fully. My mom made cupcakes instead of a cake to save money, but my siblings ate them all before I could have seconds. I was never allowed to have a party because my mom thought my friends were too messy and loud. By the age of 10, I had given up hope of them making any effort for my birthday and just treated it like any other day when I was with them. Fast forward to my 18th birthday yesterday, and I made the decision to spend it with my friends, boyfriend, and dad. I was out all day and didn't return until nearly 10 p.m. To my surprise, my mom and stepdad were waiting for me and immediately started berating me for not spending the day with them. Apparently, they had prepared a small celebration that went to waste because I wasn't there. They were furious, calling me inconsiderate and ungrateful. In the midst of their rant, I couldn't keep it in any longer and snapped back, questioning why this birthday suddenly mattered when they had never truly cared about it before. They were shocked, giving me the chance to escape to my room and go to sleep. When I woke up, I found texts from my grandparents and aunt saying that I had been disrespectful and ungrateful for saying those things to my mom and stepdad. Your parents and step-siblings have consistently mistreated and neglected you for years. They allowed you to be bullied by your step-siblings and did nothing to protect you. They neglected your birthday celebrations and treated you as if you didn't matter. It is completely understandable that you chose to spend your 18th birthday with people who actually care about you and treat you well. Your response to their outburst, while maybe not ideal, was a result of years of mistreatment and neglect. Your feelings are justified. Your grandparents and aunt are wrong to call you disrespectful and ungrateful. They likely don't have the full picture of what you've gone through. It's important to prioritize your own well-being and surround yourself with people who value and respect you. Am I the antagonist for threatening to call the cops on my child's father for refusing to return our child to me? For context, I have a 2-year-old child with my ex-partner. We are both in our mid-20s. Earlier this week, my ex called me twice urgently asking me to answer my phone. When I finally answered, he was angry because our child might have contracted hand, foot, and mouth disease. To provide some background, just a week earlier, my younger brother, who lives in the same household as my child and me, caught the disease from his school teammates. I informed my ex about this to keep him informed. Fast forward to this week, it was my ex's turn to have our child. He usually has her once a week, and I take care of her on the remaining days as he works long hours. So he called me, furious that our child was getting sick, essentially blaming me for not taking necessary precautions to prevent her from getting sick. However, I had taken measures to avoid contact with my brother, disinfecting everything he might have touched, and using hand sanitizer frequently. I explained to him that I was trying my best, but he insisted that he didn't want our child back in my house to avoid the risk of getting the disease since my brother lives there. I told him that it wouldn't make a difference if she's already sick and that my brother is now better and back at school. This led to an argument. Due to his work schedule, he wouldn't have been able to take care of her properly, and he would have likely tried to leave her with someone else in his family. I had to end the conversation there as I had to work, but I planned to talk to him later that night as it was time for him to drop her off. I called him and asked if he would bring her back at the agreed-upon time or if I should go and pick her up. He ignored my question and continued arguing. Finally, I said that I would just pick her up, to which he responded with a threat not to answer if I call. In response, I told him that if he doesn't bring her back on time, I would call the police. Now he is angry at me and claims I'm evil. He is also threatening to seek full custody, which would mean I would never see or hear from my child again. I'm starting to wonder if my reaction was too strong and if I overreacted by threatening to involve the police. You're not in the wrong here. You took the necessary precautions to keep your child from getting sick, and it's unfortunate that she caught it regardless. It's also concerning that your ex is threatening full custody and cutting off contact with your child over this issue. Threatening to call the police may have been a bit extreme, but it seems like it was the result of frustration and trying to ensure that your child's well-being is taken seriously. However, it would be best to try and resolve this issue through communication and understanding, rather than escalating the situation with threats. It might be worth considering mediation or involving a third party to help navigate this custody issue and find a fair and reasonable solution for both parties involved. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.